As with all of our presentations here at Railroads University, whether we're coming together in person or online like we are today, it's important that we share an acknowledgement of the traditional lands. We here at Railroads University acknowledge that our campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. It's with great gratitude that we live, learn, work, and play here where the past, present, and future scopes of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, staff, and faculty come together. This is a great time to test out that chat box function and let us know, where in the world are you joining us from today? If you have any questions that you're coming into today's webinar, pop them in the chat box. We'll of course leave time at the end of our conversation today to dive into some questions, but as things come up, pop them in the chat box and we'll move through those together. My name is Selena Kunar and I'm an education specialist here on campus, and I am thrilled to be here with Dr. Frederic Fovet, the program head of our Master of Arts and graduate diplomas in educational leadership and management. Hey, Frederic, thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. Yes, welcome everyone, and welcome to this session. And I'm the program head of the MELM program that you're considering, and I also teach 2 courses on the program. So you would, if you joined, you would know me in 2 capacities: as overall overhead program head, and also as an instructor on 2 occasions.
Awesome. Well, we're going to hear more from Frederic in just a few slides. So you've gotten to know us a little bit better. We've shared opportunities for us to get to know you a little bit better in the chat box. So what we're going to do now is get to know Railroads University a little bit better. After that, we're going to move to some program overviews, chat quickly about our admission and application requirements, and of course, leave time for those questions and conversations. But again, as questions come up for you, pop them into our chat box. The programs that we're talking about today are offered in what we called our blended format. So that means you have the best of both worlds, where you're able to complete a significant component of your learning online, but you're able to still come to our beautiful campus and engage with your cohort and faculty in an in-person way as well. So that's why we like to give a quick snapshot of what our campus looks like, so you know what to expect when you join us here. Being located in Victoria, BC, Canada, we're pretty lucky to have a relatively mild climate. So these photos are an okay depiction of what our campus looks like year-round. Here at Railroads, we ensure small class sizes and a conversational way of teaching, because we believe when your professors are your peers, our classrooms become think tanks and learning becomes a way of life on our campus. You'll notice quickly here at Railroads, we're not about one-sided lectures or furious note-taking, but instead about exploring theories and sharing perspectives. Being a university for working professionals means that our learners can and are expected to bring challenges that you're facing in your classrooms, in your real world, to us at Railroads University. You'll notice that there's no divide between theory and practice. We are truly doing real-world problem solving in real time. Our classrooms are filled with leaders from your professors, who are what we call scholar practitioners. So folks who are not only academic experts, but who are out in the world putting into practice what they teach in our classrooms. And also your wonderful cohort members. So here at Railroads, many of our programs move through their learning environments in this cohort model. So that means you're with a carefully curated group of individuals with a variety of unique backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences that will complement and challenge your own. And you move through every course with this group together, all the way through to convocation. And in many cases, far beyond convocation as well, blossoming into really wonderful and rich personal and professional networks. As I mentioned, Railroads, we move through our program delivery in this blended format. And that's because we pioneered this blended learning model, because we believe that education shouldn't be limited to our walls. If it's worth anything, it'll be able to transcend those. So in these few slides coming up, you'll see all the different ways that we really make sure our learning is able to enhance your life and not pause it. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Frederic to tell us a bit more about our programs.
Thanks, Selena. So I think I'd like to start by saying there's 4 features that distinguish the programs from similar programs we may be looking at across Canada. And Selena has touched on some of those, but I'm just going to emphasize again their relevance. So the cohort model, the fact that unlike other programs in other universities sometimes, where you will be with different peers at different times, you actually follow all of your courses with the same peers, the same group of peers whom you meet during residency, spend 2 weeks with, and then you follow through the program with them for 2 years. So that's a real support and sometimes just as strong in terms of interaction than the interaction that you have with the instructor. That sort of collaborative inquiry that you're able to carry on. The second point is that it's inquiry based. And that means that a lot of your courses will, again, as Selena said, enable you to blend theory and practice and take some of your concepts and the issue discussed in class directly back to your working environment and actually be able to construct inquiry-based approaches right there. And we will see in the program structure that we actually have a capstone at the end, so that for 6 credits you are actually engaged in an inquiry-based course for 6 months, literally. The other strong pillar of the program is the scholar practitioner model that Selena mentioned. And really what that means in practice is that I'm really the only person on the program who's actually a career academic and actually works full-time in a university. All your other instructors are PhD holders, but they are still involved in the field. So they would still be principals and still working in superintendent, etc., and still be involved in practice, which again avoids instruction remaining too rigid and too theoretical, but really connects it directly back to the field and to the relevance to your work environment. And lastly, the last sort of strength of the course of the program is that it really acknowledges the fact that you're working, you're full-time workers. And so the way you will see the way the program is structured means that you only take 1 course at a time, but you take them in rapid succession. You have no downtime. In other universities, you might have a summer off or have times when you're not able to take courses, or other times when you have to take more than 1. In this, you have a very sort of stable regularity throughout, because you take 1 course for 9 weeks, you have a week break, another course for 9 weeks, a week break, and so on for 2 years. So although obviously it represents a lot of work, it is spaced in a way that allows you to be juggling this with a full-time work, and we acknowledge that, and that's part of the Royal Road recipe. I think we'll go on to the next slide, Selena. So the purpose of the program is, I'll just read through it quickly, to help aspiring existing school administrators develop the knowledge and skills that will enable them to function as effective leaders in today's and tomorrow's changing environment, education environment. So what do we mean by that? I'm going to jump straight to the questions which we normally receive. Do you have to be in a leadership role already? No, but you have to aspire to a leadership role. So it means that you're probably a classroom practitioner who's looking to change hats and to move into a supervisory role. It could be an assistant principal or principal role, but in other contexts, it could be different, totally different. We have folks that come from language schools, who come from consulting businesses, but they are all going through that process of moving from front to front, face-to-face, front line with students in the classroom, where their reflection is very pedagogical, very much about teaching, to moving to a role which is more supervisory and administrative, where the lens is going to be more leadership-based, where you're leading other people. It could be domestic or international. We have many international folks who are joining us, and often they are already in principal roles in overseas schools, but sometimes they've never had an opportunity to take an accreditation or a qualification that sort of warrants that position. So it's sort of backtrack. They get the position and then they come and get the qualification with us while they're already in the job. So this is interesting for you, because there's this cross-pollination. You may be talking not just to teachers, but to people who are already in the shoes that you aspire to be in. So you get that sort of multi-perspective, and sometimes, as I said, beyond domestic. We obviously have BC candidates and students, but we have students from all across Canada and from beyond. So you get this multiple perspective from different jurisdictions, different systems, different ways of functioning. And then it really does focus on the competencies that you will need. So it's a very competency-based program. It's not so much saying, we want you to think this way or do this, but we want you to acquire the competencies that we think are required for an educational leader in the 21st century, regardless of your environment, basically. So you are then able to transfer those skills and those competencies into whatever environment your job and your career path takes you. Okay, thanks, Selena. We'll go to the next slide. So this is a graphic overview of what the program is about, and we'll go through it really quickly. If we look at the center mostly, that's the important sort of osmosis in the program. You see that it's 2 hours between leadership and learning. And there could be a lot of puns made about, are we teaching you about learning for leadership or leadership for learning? Well, it's both, and that's the point. Right through your courses, you will look at these 2 dimensions. So how do we carry out that teaching with a view of what good leadership is, and how do you lead educational environments for good learning, right? So constantly we flip back between these 2 perspectives. All of the boxes that you have in the graphic representation represents many of the learning outcomes that you have and the actual specific competencies that you're trying to gain. So just going through it very quickly, evidence-based decisions, that goes back to that inquiry model that we've discussed. Quite a few of those are going to link back to that inquiry model. And that inquiry model, again, is about taking the theory and applying it directly to the field. And similarly, being able to take your concrete issues from the field and bringing them back to the classroom to discuss and find theoretical solutions. Planning for school improvement, one of your courses about that. And again, this fits well within the inquiry-based process. Supervision for teacher growth. This is part of some of the competencies that are directly related to leadership, as again, we want to prepare you for a role as a leader. So it's not just about leading learners, but it's also about leading other professionals and peers, and that's what you're learning. Developing student assessment systems. Obviously, this goes back to, good leadership is also about good learning and seeing how we can improve systems and improve practices. Communicating effectively. Any program on leadership obviously is going to have a large component around communication, both internal and external communication. So within schools and how schools communicate with the external environment as well. That would be directly linked again to your leadership competencies. Leading with technology. So there are certain pillars that you will see right across the program. And one of those, and really there are pillars that have changed the reality of teaching in the 21st century, and we consider them to be embedded right through, and those are technology, the internationalization of the K-12 sector, and inclusion. So those 3 pillars, you will see them right through, and you have a course specifically on technology, but then every course will also deal on how we are adapting to a 21st century sort of technology-rich environment. Using change management process, a lot of the work that goes around in the program is systems-based, systems thinking-based. Obviously, when you try to trigger change in large, complex environments, the process itself is complex and requires a lot of strategic reflection. And that's what we are, throughout the program, encourage you to look at, is how systems thinking impacts the decisions that you make, and how you have to consider systems throughout your decision-making and your implementation of change. Involving parents and the community, that links back to communicating effectively. As we said, that communication is both internal and external. When it's external, obviously it relates to parents and communities and involving them as stakeholders. Collaborating with others, again, that could be internal or external, but that's one of the competencies that you develop. The cohort model there is something that leads you to reflect on those skills and those competencies right through. So not just in the course, but in the process of working collaboratively with others, you are reflecting on your own abilities and enriching your abilities to work collaboratively with others. And lastly, enhancing self-awareness. A lot of the work, as is the case with most master's programs, is about self-reflection on your own practice and developing an ability to carry out that self-reflection autonomously throughout. So that's one of the core pillars as well. Selena, we'll go on to the next one. When we talked about reflection just now, and this is a graph that we use quite a lot in the program, we tend to talk about 4 lenses that you continuously use in the MELM program. And those lenses are, and it could be in the same assignments, in the same course, someone asks you to look at the problem or an issue through 4 different lenses. And those lenses are always yourself, first of all, as an individual, what you bring to the table in terms of your own baggage, your own past, your own perspectives, yourself as a learner, you are a graduate student, but also you are a learner. You're still in the classroom. You still have that perspective yourself. So you are able to reflect on those needs and those perspectives and those experiences. And then the third one is as educators. As we've said, the starting point really for all students in MELM is that they've had some classroom experience. So reflecting on that positioning, yourself as a teacher, yourself as an educator, a classroom practitioner. And then the fourth lens is the one we are leading you to develop through the program, is to add that extra layer where you are thinking in terms of leadership and seeing yourself as a leader of others, not just as a classroom practitioner. So those four lenses are really embedded in all courses and throughout the program. And you are, by the end, able to flip back and forth, looking at sometimes the same phenomena, but looking at it from different lenses and different perspectives, which enables you to, again, understand the complexity of our educational landscapes and our education environments. Thanks, and then we'll go to the next one. We're getting into more of the more administrative details now, but it's important too. So it's the Master of Arts itself is a 2-year program, 33 credits, and 2 completion options. We will look at this in a later slide. There's a possibility of doing a thesis or completion through what we call course-based, and then those courses involve a research paper, which is a double course, a 6-credit course, but it's still a course. It's a major project. And within a Master of Arts, you have the option of registering and being eligible for the IBO certificate in advanced certificate in research. And we'll have a slide on that a little bit later. You may have questions on that. There is a small program, the Graduate Diploma, which serves as a feeder to the Master of Arts. So it could be taken separately, entirely separately, or it can serve as a feeder to the Masters. If you see it as a stepping stone to the Masters, it can be done in 2 different ways. Some students take the diploma and decide right away they want to carry straight on, so they change their registration and continue to the Masters. Others take a break, and sometimes we have students coming back a couple of years later saying, okay, I'd like to re-register and I'd like to complete the Masters on the basis that I've already completed the diploma. So this are 2 possibilities of reflection as you consider applications, and 2 avenues into the program. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, and this is a slide that Selena has very kindly created for us to create some clarity. And it really takes you through in a linear way through what your 2 years would look like with the various options at different times when there's a fork in the road and you have choices. So the first are very unique to Royal Roads. It's a preparatory course because we do a lot of work online and you come from very different geographical locations and a lot of you are remote. We do prepare you for navigating our services, our resources, our online platforms, and getting to know university. And there are 2 ways you do this. These are both online courses that are taken before you actually start the courses proper. The first one is Introduction to Academic Integrity. It talks about plagiarism and how to use sources wisely, etc. And the second one is the link. The link is much more varied and it really deals with most of the services you are likely to use during your program. Students find that very helpful because it's a non-credit course. You can't really fail. You have to complete it, but you can't really fail. But you do have to get your hand dirty at trying everything, trying the library, trying the services, contacting people, getting to know your cohort, using the tools, using Moodle, and etc. And by the end, a lot of students say this is really, they're very grateful for it because it's on day 1 of the courses. You're no longer dealing with the nitty-gritty of getting to know practicalities. You're ready for the teaching and the learning and to get on with them. Then the program starts with what we call residency, which is made up of 2 programs. It's the only time in the program when you have 2 courses. It's your first summer. We make the most of the fact you're full of energy as you begin and you have 2 squeezed in there during the summer. But it's also because they are blended into this model, which is blended too, the blended model. So you will start both at the same time, 501, which is Leadership for Learning, Theory to Practice, and 505, Leading for Social Justice, which I teach. And the blended model consists of 3 weeks online where you are starting the course. And then you're coming to campus and spend 2 weeks face-to-face, where the majority of the teaching and learning happens. And then we wrap up and we close off with 3 more weeks online where you are finishing your assignments, etc., and wrapping up the course. And that constitutes residency. So introduction to 2 courses, introduction to the university, introduction to your cohorts. A lot of foundational work happens in this 8 weeks where you are really getting to know everyone and everything and all of the staff and the faculty, etc. After that begins, as is the case in most online blended program, the more online part, which complements the face-to-face that you've had. And you take, as we've said, the courses in succession, 9 weeks at a time, with 1 week to rest in between. And in order, I'll just read them for you, but you have a course called Research for School Improvement. Then you have Building and Managing School Community, School Culture and Communication. Then 550, Communication and School Leadership. So one's internal, one's external. So you're looking at the communication internally in terms of school culture themselves, and then communications vis-a-vis the rest of the world. And then you finish off with Leading Technological Integration in Schools, which is your the very technology-rich course, which wraps up the diploma. If you've decided to finish there and you were registered for diploma, that would be at the end of your degree. But if you are registered for the master's, you continue, and this is where you have two different routes. So you could go on to the thesis route, in which case you have a common course, the LRNT 600, which you take with other students from the Mallet program and the Michiel program. One's focused on technology, one's focused on higher ed. But all of your peers are also taking a thesis. So this is a course where you're learning to design a research proposal, basically. This is why you're all together, because it's a process that's really in common. And after that, you begin your journey with your supervisor. So the more individual journey of the thesis itself, once you have drafted the proposal. And that continues till the end of your program, and you defend your thesis and you graduate. So this would be the thesis route. For others, you continue, as I've said, is what we call a course-based process. So you continue the same routine, 9 weeks of course, a break, 9 weeks of course, and the courses that you then are encountering is curriculum, instruction, and assessment, a course that many people find really foundational because not everyone has looked at curriculum design from a leadership perspective. So this one is often one that people are really, really very excited about, and that has an immediate impact on their competencies at work and ability to lead change at work. Supervision, coaching, and mentoring, 580. This is the very sort of administrative leadership part. How do you supervise people in an environment? So this is the core competency to development there. 525 is a wrap-up course. You actually develop a digital portfolio of all the work that you've done and all the work that you've already been involved in. And then it leads you into certain reflective exercises on your practice and on your journey as a student. But it's a very product-based sort of course, because at the end you are actually able to showcase your digital portfolio. All of this has come together in the digital portfolio, where all your learning, all your competencies can be showcased to your workplace, your future employers, etc. And the last one is the one we've talked about, the 6 credit course. It's actually a major project. So you are actually involved in an inquiry-based project that usually has to do with your own school, your own environment, but could be another environment too. And you produce a paper that then you would have a choice of publishing if it was good enough, or certainly sharing back with your work environment or your school district, sharing in in an educational journal or magazine, etc. And a lot of students have been quite successful in doing that. The question you probably have is the thesis route. How is that decided and when do you apply? So you don't have to worry about that at all. If you are interested, the application actually happens within the program itself. We normally wait, if you look at the graph there, distance 1. So when you're in 510 in your 3rd course, this is where you are drafting the application for the thesis. And then there's a school committee which reviews your application, and you obtain your decision right then. This has just happened for the 2021 cohort. So they've just had the decision, and we have 2 students who decided to go thesis, and both have been accepted into the thesis route. And then you continue with the courses till the summer, and then after that you go into 600 and you focus on the thesis itself. So you do have some advance notice and foresight, because you know sort of 6 months in advance that you have been accepted and you're ready to go, but you don't have to focus on it yet. You can prepare yourself psychologically for the work that lies ahead, and that's all been secure. I think we've covered all that, Selena. I think we'll go into the next slide. TQS approved. So yes, the Master of Education is in BC is approved as a teacher qualification service. In other provinces too, depending on which province, you would have to inquire with myself. And sometimes if it's a province we've not dealt with before, we can make inquiry for you. But it is recognized by many as a teacher qualification in terms of competencies for many provinces in Canada. So do inquire with us if you have questions there. We'll go on to the next, which I think is the IBO. Yeah, there's always a lot of questions about the IBO certificate. So we have an agreement with IBO to be able to offer you the IB Advanced Certificates in Leadership Research. The way it functions is that the program has been scrutinized and looked at by IBO, and they feel that the competencies that you develop in the master's are similar to the ones that are required for the IBO certificate in leadership research. And therefore, you are not required to produce extra work or additional papers. You are just required to complete your master's and to focus all your major papers on an IB environment. So, for example, if you're taking particularly the 610, your major project, the expectation is that your inquiry-based project for 6th credit is focused on an IB environment. So either an IB school, an IB issue, or an IB accreditation issue. And that's the way you focus your work on the IB, and that leads you to completing the certificate and being awarded the certificate. If you have questions about this, that's actually dealt by one of my administrative coordinator, Marlene, which would then take care of all that with you, not so much with me, but she will explain to you how to register, how to gain access to the IB platform, how to, at the end, obtain your completion and the certificate for the, your graduation papers, etc. So you have full administrative support there. But you are fairly autonomous in the sense that it's your decision to register, and this is a choice that you have, and doesn't, you're not forced to do it by any means, but it is an option that's available to you if you wish to, and then you have administrative support from us at that end. I think we'll go to the next one. If there is the next one, it might be back to you. There you go.
Amazing. Thank you, Frederic. Oh my gosh, we didn't give you a lot of time, but you still covered a lot of ground. I've actually had some questions come in to me via private message. So for those folks who sent a question, know that we just have a few slides where we're going to walk through the how to apply side of things, and we'll come back to those. So we'll leave this as an opportunity for folks to continue popping questions in the chat box as we're right around the corner from our Q&A. So before we get there, some of the things we should chat about. Admission requirements. So here at Railroads University, we have two admission pathways, our standard admissions and our flexible admissions. So looking at standard admissions, we're looking for educational professionals with a 4-year undergraduate degree in a related field from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as some relevant work experience. Flexible admissions. So flexible admissions is for those folks who may not have a traditional academic background looking towards graduate education, but they have been in the field for an extensive number of years, elbows deep in learning and experiencing the sector in that way. And here at Railroads, again, we don't have such a clear divide between theory and practice, and that shows up in our admissions models as well. So for flexible admissions, we'd be looking for folks with some undergraduate education and a significant relevant work experience. We'll note that applications are assessed on a case-by-case basis. So if when I was reading out the standard admissions, you thought, oh no, dang, maybe not me, that's okay. Connect with our offices, as we're so excited to chat with you about your personal, professional, and academic experiences to help understand if flexible admissions could be right for you. The next important thing to touch on is, well, how exactly do you go about applying? Well, as with most things these days, it kicks off with an online application. At this time, our online application includes a fee of $128.21. And once your online application is in, we look for some supporting documents. So for this program, we look for things like official transcripts, personal statement, structured resume, and 2 letters of reference. Our website is a wonderful resource when it comes to understanding what these supporting documents are, how you go about building them, and then how you go about submitting them to our offices. So for example, on our website, you will have some guiding questions or some guiding words to help structure your personal statement. So for example, your statement should comment on your personal and career goals, the expectations you have for the program in relation to the achievement of your goals, and the strengths you feel you can bring to the program. And then within this statement, we encourage you to demonstrate your interest/experience in teamwork, collaborative practice, professional learning communities, and communities of practice. we have similar helpful information when it comes to putting together your structured resume, then some more practical information around how you submit your official transcripts to our offices and who can be your referees for this program and how they submit their letters to our offices as well. Upcoming intakes. Oh, the exciting one. Well, we are just around the corner from 2022, so we are not too far from our coming intake. Our next intake for this program begins June 13th, 2022. So that means our application deadline is March 13th, 2022. This is a great time for me to note that here at Rural Roads University, we do something called rolling admissions. So that's where we're accepting applications on an ongoing basis. So we're not actually waiting until that March 13th to take a look at everyone who's applied. Instead, once your online application is in, as well as your supporting documents, we're able to adjudicate your file and let you know about your seat in the program. Because of this, our programs can sometimes fill up quickly. So on this slide, you can see our coming intake for 2022, but also our intake for 2023 as well, if you're here doing some future planning. So our start date for 2023 puts us at June 12th, 2023, and an application deadline of March 12th, 2023. So when you submit your online application, let us know which intake are you interested in participating in, and that lets us know to hold a seat in the program for your file to be adjudicated. So some questions we typically get. One very important one about financial aid. Of course, financial planning is a significant component of planning your continued education. So we wanted to make sure that within the slide deck, we included the website and direct phone lines of our wonderful financial aids and awards specialist team. So they can answer any questions you may have about loans, awards, scholarships, or other types of funding as well. As with most financial aid and award offices on university and college campuses, this one is so underutilized. So if you're interested in taking a program with us here at Rural Roads, please send them an email, give them a quick call, and you'll be able to understand what resources may be available to you internally at Rural Roads or externally as well. Keeping on the theme of helpful people here at Rural Roads University, you may have noticed Lisa Murray in our chat box. Lisa has been popping in a ton of helpful links as we've been talking today, so you can navigate what we're talking about and where to find it on the website. And Lisa is just one wonderful example of the team we have here on campus, eager to answer any questions you might have about this program or any others as well. So if you're joining us from within Canada, you can connect with Lisa and her team at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us from outside Canada, Lisa's counterparts in our international admissions and registration team would be more than happy to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. So with that, we have come to the end of the formal PowerPoint for our discussion today. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen and move over to our chat box. In our chat box, oh my gosh, yes, Lisa has put a ton of handy links to access Rural Roads Learning, Teaching, and Research Model, which will better explain our signature pedagogy here at Rural Roads University. And then links again to support things such as our upcoming program schedules, our courses, completion options, and the IBO certificate as well. So heading up to our questions. Frederic, we had a question come in around time commitment. What is the time commitment expected for the link and then going forward throughout the program courses?
Yeah, it's a frequent question. So for the link, it's actually fairly flexible because you do have weekly, it goes on for 2 weeks and you have weekly objectives. Some people do them as assigned day to day. If it's not done, Marlene at the end chases you up to make sure that they're completed by the end. So you do have a lot of flexibility there. We're aware as well it's the year end for a lot of teachers, so you may not always be able to complete the task as you were supposed to, but it can be done asynchronously. You don't need to work, you know, too often in groups at that point, and you can really get them done on the weekend or in the evening or whenever you can. Again, non-credit, so really it's just a matter of being familiar with the task and having your hand at trying these various sort of tasks that you have to do. For the courses themselves, it depends on course, because in terms of the spread of the workload, because some different courses have different number of assignments placed in different sort of milestones in the course. There is a sort of, you know, a typical sort of credit hour commitment sort of catchphrase that we can give you in terms of, you know, represents sort of 30 hours of work, etc. The truth is that everyone works through tasks very differently. So it's very hard to be able to put a timeline and say, okay, it will take you, you know, 40 hours a course or 50 hours a course. It depends to what extent, first of all, you're interested, you're doing extra reading, to what extent you are a very fast worker, or you actually like to take your time. So there's an element of personalization there that's hard to, you know, to really detail for each person. But the quick answer is that I find that it's the same commitment that you would have really in any institution at the master's level, meaning that you will have some reading to do. It's definitely the difference between undergraduate and graduate level. You can't just go into an assignment and say, right, I've listened to a lecture, I'm doing an assignment. There's always that step where you will be required to do some reading. And the depth of the reading will obviously depend on your prior experience, on your interest for that specific question and the different course. And then you will be able to do the work on the basis of the reading that you've done. So it's a triangular really progress where you are always first going to the sources and the literature, and then you're going back to, you know, to the course content and being able to complete the assignments. But that is very diffuse right through the course. You have 9-week course that happens right through. So it's not necessarily peaks where you are working intensely. There's no finals and there's no such things. It's all course based. It's all, you know, paper based and other assignments. So you have a lot of freedom, a lot of flexibility. So all this to say that in comparison to the workload that you would be dealing with in any master's, it's probably more palatable and more manageable, because again, you're only taking one course at a time. I don't really know any other program at master's level that allows you to just take one course at a time. Normally you would at least have to take 2 courses, then you would have a break at another point when those courses are offered, etc. For us, you have that steadiness, that your workload is very steady. Once you get into those first courses and you get your habits and your, you know, your work study balance, those strategies last you right through, because it's the same, really the same pattern that will last right through the 2 years.
To keep on the theme of time commitment, we have a question here around, are assignments and participation asynchronous or synchronous in this program?
Yeah, so the School of Education Technology has the commitment that there's no compulsory synchronous component. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have synchronous components, but we don't force you to attend. So they are recorded, and we assume that if you're not able to attend for a reason or another, you'll be interested in going to see the recording. So in essence, the direct answer to that is that everything can be asynchronous, but there are certainly a lot of opportunities for synchronous learning too, if that's what you like and that's what you gain the most from. Those are available right through as well, except that they're never compulsory. So you can always have the option of watching them afterwards.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came in is, could you share some of the types of research done by past students?
Yeah, so there's quite a few students who have been involved in either indigenous projects or working. I can think of the students, for example, who's Capstone. He's gone into working on the publication of this. So Capstone was looking at Northern Saskatchewan, looking at some of the resources put in place for non-Indigenous teachers to gain a better understanding about truth and reconciliation and the inclusion of Indigenous students. And he was looking at some of the failings of those programs and how they could be improved. So that's really action research directly within those resources, trying to improve them and trying to make them more powerful and more effective for the future. Got a few students who recently worked on some of the sexual orientation and gender policies in BC, and again looked at how to dribble them down, because obviously they're in place and they are in the policy book, but how to dribble them down. One student was looking at elementary classes, how to dribble them down in elementary classes, what kind of resources to develop so that we can have discussions on the SOGI policies in elementary. Another looking at, again, Indigenous students in high school and how some of the SOGI policies at the moment don't take into account indigeneity. So trying to create some intersection there, making teachers understand that within the LGBTQS plus group, really to target and look out for under these policies. There's also two-spirited students in that they needed specific sort of spaces as well to start feeling comfortable in school. So those are some of the recent examples that have been fairly powerful. And those people have led straight on to actually being able to work on some of that with their school board. So returning back to the school board, having some of their work published, etc. So it's obviously we're always looking for that, for interest in topics that the school boards themselves or the schools are interested in having you research, right? Because it's of immediate impact to them.
Oh, wow. So quite a gambit of things then. And Lisa's actually shared a link for some ELM student research that's been captured by our team. So feel free to check out that link if you want to learn more. I have one more question on my end. So this is the last call for questions. Feel free to pop anything you're interested in knowing more about in our chat box. We have a question here around, if I'm interested in pursuing the thesis, how connected will I still be with my cohort?
Well, that is really up to you, in the sense that by then you've worked with them for a year. To be honest, we have a lot of communication platforms for our students. So obviously you're on Moodle, you're in the courses together, etc. There's a mail Moodle which you remain connected with. So you have a course shell that remains open through the 2 years. So you're still connected to your peers through that. That's the one I also use when I do guest speakers in session, etc., and connect with the cohort. But on top of that, to be honest, all of our students, most of our cohorts create WhatsApp group, etc. So they're connected in many other ways. So by then the canvas of the connections exist, and it's really up to you to what extent you want to remain connected with the rest of the students who are going ahead. And then don't forget, you also are creating a community with the students who are in thesis, who are not just your own program, but are also in the Mallet and the Mahil programs. And then you share that specific journey, so the same milestones, your proposal, finding your supervisors, etc. And that connects you to a smaller group, but very intense cohort too, that has very of the similar interests and similar milestones and timeframes that you're having.
Wonderful. Well, we have completed this session with some extra time for lunch, dinner, or a midnight snack, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Before we sign off, Frederic, was there anything else you wanted to share?
2 little notes I took there. So I know when you talked about a personal statement, that's a question a lot of people do come back with. And again, as I've explained to you, really, I know all of our admissions counselors are looking for the same thing, and we're looking for that too. It's, again, that you have classroom experience, that you come from a pedagogical lens, from a teaching lens, and you are looking or planning or seeking to gain that leadership role. So as long as we can see that, first of all, your branding, the years that you've had doing the classroom work, and why and how you're looking to be doing something else, looking at more the leadership part and the management part. That could be that you've already done it, or you've been invited to do it, or you've been led by your own supervisor to get engaged with leadership, or simply that you have an interest. But those are the 2 things that we would like to see, right? That the teaching part is there, and that those opportunities or that desire to go forward and be engaged in leadership is also there. A question that hasn't come up today, but I know it comes up often later on, is we're still in a disrupted landscape with COVID and insecurities and what might happen. So just to reassure you that for 2 years we've not been able to run the residency because of COVID, and we've developed a very successful and effective online residency that has run just as smoothly. At the moment, Royal Wales has taken the decision along with the BC government that these are safe times and we're back to face-to-face, but obviously regular assessments are done. And I know that for those residencies later on in the spring, an assessment will be done as whether the situation has changed or not. If it hasn't changed, we'll go ahead as planned and as you've been demonstrated today. If by any chance something changed, the program would run just in the same way, except we already have this structured and it has run for 2 years, a very effective residency. Just to let you know, if it did come to that, we don't squeeze the residency in 2 weeks, then we simply, because it's online, we diffuse it on 8 weeks so that you don't have to be in front of your screen for 2 weeks. You are on your screen and you have more tasks that are spread over 8 weeks so that you can still get on with your life, etc. And you don't have to travel to the campus, and then you're still able to get that residency piece and all the same elements. So just a reassuring note there that if the worst came to the worst, there's a plan B, there's always a plan B.
There's always a plan B, indeed. Well, I Big, big thank you to you, Frederic, for everything that you shared. Another thank you to everyone who joined us live and to those who are watching our recording. Before we sign off, I'll share that Lisa in our chat box has written a comment here saying, we encourage applicants to chat with our amazing educational leadership and management alumni who can share their RU experience and how they're applying their learning. So if you're interested in talking to some of our alumni, you can connect with Lisa directly at lisa.murray@rollroads.ca. So with that, we will wish you a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, and hopefully chat again very soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Wonderful. Bye, everyone.